All right, Quintin, episode 24 of the Nervous System Training Podcast. Thanks everyone who's watching. Remember, like, comment, subscribe. We appreciate it. All right, we're going to jump in today talking about Supercat or Supercat alternatives. A question I got was about how to use the leverage squat machine, which is like the more common Supercat type machine, but without the gear ratio. How to use that for some of the movements, or if how it's similar, how it's different, that kind of stuff.
Okay.
Pulling up a
Do we
picture.
have an image of some of the machines they're talking about?
Yeah, I'm pulling one up here. So this is the kind of thing we're talking about. So the differences I noticed were that there's no gear ratio, and then the fulcrum of the lever is also in the middle, whereas on the Supercat there's so much back here that so it ends up being kind of like a bigger radius of the circle
Yeah.
that it's rotating on. So the angle is a little different, but it's similar in a lot of ways too. We've got the slant board on a lot of them at the base. It does do that squat motion. But yeah, I don't see people do plyometrics on these. So what are your thoughts on these machines? Can you use them in place of Supercat in certain situations?
I would say yes, in some ways you could, especially if you wanted to do if you wanted to really work like isometrics, isokinetics. Because one thing that's good about these machine designs is that it's more shoulder and clavicle loading than it is spine loading. Like unlike a bar where it really kind of like loads up your back. And I remember I was talking to a physical therapist that was like, he could not like let go of like this barbell when it comes to training baseball players. And he's like, well, what about like the core strength? Like you really need the squatting, like it really engages the core. And I'm like, okay, like, yeah, it engages the core, but there's so many better ways we can engage the core besides like forcing the core to brace for like a back squat. So with this, like you're not loading the spine as much. That's a huge plus. You can push a much higher volume of loading onto the athlete because of that, because it's a lot safer for their body. Time efficiency. You can save a shit ton of time with a machine like this compared to using a barbell, because you don't need to go over perfect technique. You don't need a spotter. You don't need to like go through like a lesson on how to do these different squats. You just load the machine up, put it on your shoulders, and just get the work done. Get the stress stimulus into the body. Now, as far as outside of that, I messed around with a machine like this one time at a gym. And I think I only put like 10 pounds on it. And I tried like doing some squat jumps. And it felt like way too much loading on the spine. Like I felt it really kind of like hit my whole spine, like a ton of force. And I was like, ooh, that did not feel great. Because of the force vectors are loaded right where the athlete holds themselves into the machine. So that means the entire load goes straight down onto the athlete. And something about the ergonomics, it just didn't feel right. Now, possibly it could just be the design of the machine. Maybe if you use this type of machine, it could feel different. I don't exactly know. There's a lot of different engineering models with this type of strength training machine. As far as plyometric, I don't know how well you can do plyometrics with it. Maybe you could, maybe you couldn't. I don't know how well it swings, how smooth it is, how well you can get the athlete in a position to like catch the arm pads in any way, how heavy the arm is. And when you're using the Supercat, because the lever system, like you're loading the carriage, and a majority of the force vector hits where the arm kind of meets the lever, right? With like the right around the chain crank ratio. And so that takes a ton of the force. And so what you're feeling is the force pressure of the arm with the carriage. And it's not as intense as say something like this. So you can really start moving the athlete around, or really start having them do more plyometrics. Because that chain crank, the way the system is designed, takes a lot of force off the athlete, especially at the end of the movements. It's just a different form of leverage onto the body. So you can experiment with it, you can mess around, and you can get some stuff done. If like as far as like a strength training application or longevity application, I would say a machine like this will get you a lot further, a lot faster than using bars. Just because of time and efficiency. And time is our most valuable resource. So, I'm all about getting it in, fast and effective without like fucking around with a lot of different complexities. So, yeah, I would say this is a superior thing to any barbell. Maybe not for like posterior hip leverage. They do have that incline platform at the bottom. Jake, you see it where he's kind of has feet slanted. That is designed to engage more of the posterior chain, which can be really helpful. But as far as the comparing to the Supercat, I don't think it'll come close. Not really. It's still very limited in comparison.
Yeah, I have one of these at my gym. It's called Workout Anytime. It's kind of like a Knockout Anytime Fitness knockoff. But yeah, it's the closest one in my house. I have a membership there, and it's the one they have is a little different where they have a slant angle and a flat angle on the bottom. So and
Mm-hmm.
it's kind of the angle's right in the middle, so you can kind of choose to do either. I would try to do plyometrics on it. I had to put a bunch of weights on the feet on the front because it kept like there's a top of the range. So as soon as it hit the top of the range, the machine started the front of the machine started lifting off
Yeah.
the floor a little bit. So I had to load it up with 245s on each corner. And I tried to do the jumps. It didn't feel good, like you said, on the spine. I was able to do like
Right.
kind of like throwing it. It was a little awkward, and the eccentric, yeah, the angle felt a little awkward since it's kind of swinging away from you by the time it hits your arms, uh, rather than coming straight down. It's kind of like on its exit, so it felt a little weird. I was really sore the next day, but it didn't feel natural, but it was a good workout.
Interesting. Yeah, but you kind of felt that though, trying to do the jumps. You feel like it was like really like jarring on the old vertebrae.
Yeah, it was not. I was not landing or jumping at the normal angle I'd be landing and jumping at I was worried I was going to hurt myself.
Yeah.
And I was only using, I'm pretty sure it was 10 pounds on each side. It was not
Yeah.
much.
It
Like it
just
just,
yeah, it just doesn't feel right. It feels like not it. It's not. It's
yeah,
not. It's not what you want to be feeling.
yeah. Do you understand exactly how the gears work on the Supercat? I can pull up a picture, but I don't, I understand logically that it overloads the eccentric phase and it makes the concentric phase easier, like relative to each other. But I don't fully understand how gears work.
Yeah. So you have like two small gears on the side, and you got a big gear in the middle. And so that means that since you have two gears, which help promote like the cranking upwards, like rolling like counterclockwise. That's what helps move. So the small gears help assist the upwards leverage. The big gear helps assist the downwards leverage. So I believe I have this understood correctly. I'm kind of tapping into high school physics, but I might be wrong about this. But what I think is going on is that because the gears are smaller, that means they can cover more rotation faster, which makes it a little easier on the concentric leverage. And because the big gear is designed to roll downwards and it's bigger, that means that it can create more leverage, uh, maybe faster or something like that. Man, this is where I'm not a really good engineer. But
Yeah,
there's something about the ratio, the two small ones to the one big one, something about the physics of it. And if you guys engineers out there can help like give us like a proper explanation, but it's the way it's designed that the downwards force is always higher than the upwards force because of that gear ratio.
yeah. I I felt it. Like it makes sense when you feel it, but I don't. It confuses me. It's with simple devices I can just look at it and it makes sense. With this, it's yeah. I've only felt it. I don't fully understand it.
Yeah, you got
We'll
some
see.
like, I don't know if it's considered like, remember like learning class one or class two lever systems like in high school
Yeah,
science. Yeah,
yeah.
there's something in there that I can't remember, but
It's
yeah,
also
something like
the weights on a different like the on the machine we're just looking at, the leverage squat machine. The weight is attached to the lever that that you're pressing into, whereas there's this whole separate mechanism over here and they're connected with the gears. So I think that's what allows it to work. Um,
Hmm. Yeah, and it also
Interesting.
reduces like the loading during the amortization phase. Like when like say you do a squat jump and like you hit the platform and you go like squat down, and then you have to exchange from concentric to eccentric. The way that the Supercat is designed is it really takes a lot of force off your body during the amortization phase of the stretch shortening cycle. Kind of like the water hand weights. It kind of runs on a similar physics principle.
Interesting. That the aeration phase is that am I saying that right? The
I don't know.
aeration.
I always see the word, and sometimes I pronounce shit incorrectly. I'm a terrible speller. I believe it's
Yeah.
called amoration phase. God. I gotta look at the. It's the exchange between like high eccentric, loading kinetic energy, then recoiling that kinetic energy. I believe
Okay.
that's the word. Some of you sports scientists or strength and conditioning nerds out there are going to be like, he's not. He doesn't know what he's talking
No,
about. He can't even use terminology right.
I've got the definition up here. It's amortization, but the amortization
Amortization. Hell yeah.
the the amortization phase is the brief transition period between the eccentric muscle lengthening and concentric muscle shortening phases of a stretch shortening cycle during high velocity power movements.
There
Interesting.
you go.
That is the crux of all these movements. Like
Yeah.
that
Amortization. How do we say it again, Jake? Let's get this right.
amortization phase.
Amortization phase. Okay.
Amortization.
Amortization phase. We
That's
gotta remember this one. We've been saying it wrong for fucking a while.
yeah. I've heard that. I didn't honestly. I wasn't aware of what that was. Interesting. Um, okay. That's so. Yeah. Well, one of my buddies is an engineer. I'll ask him to explain gears to me. Like I'm a 5-year old.
Yeah. Oh, we gotta get Ram on the podcast. The guy who like builds
Yeah.
these builds. He'll know exactly how to explain this because that guy's like a freaking mad scientist.
Yeah. For anyone watching who doesn't know, Ram it was, correct me if I'm wrong, but one of Marv Marinovich's best friends, and he's currently still tinkering with these devices, making variations of them, and he's got like a gym, no real social media presence, no online presence, but he's kind of doing his mad scientist thing somewhere in the world right now.
Yeah, he reminds me of like in like a Lord of the Rings novel, like you have to climb to like the highest peak of a mountain to find like this like exiled like wizard, that just doesn't talk to anyone and he's like making posts like Yoda.
Yeah, yeah. He's featured in a couple other people's posts. I think that's how you tracked him down. Or we watched one of the videos where he was in the background, and we're like, "Who is this dude?" And I know some of our viewers sent us some stuff that helped, and then you found him somehow.
Yeah, actually no, he found us. He found
He
us.
found us. Interesting.
Yeah, he was watching he's been watching me for a while, but like he's like super like low key and I think another swim coach that I was working with in California knew him as well. And she had my number and she gave my number to him and he made contact with me after that episode.
And that'd be a cool episode if we could get him on.
We can get him on. We just got to talk to him a little bit more.
Yeah. Cool. Um,
But yeah, man, Supercat's freaking game changing tool.
yeah, it's so one of the questions I had for you today was about the Supercat and the history of it anyways. So we can jump into that. I was wondering what is the history of the Marinoviches with the Supercat? Did they find it? I know was Powernetics the first company that made it? I know Sports Science Lab makes a lot of them now. Um,
Hmm.
but yeah, are they directly connected with them, or did they just find it and then they're adjacent because they used them? How what's the connection there?
So as far as I understand correctly, from what I've been told from like guys like Dr. Nail and Ram and just picking up like bits and pieces of the Marinovich lore over the years, is that apparently that there's kind of a complex history, and I could be slightly muddying like the history or merging it together. But what I think happened is I think that there were similar designs somewhere back in like the 70s or 80s with the isokinetic machines. Like one machine called the kangaroo jumper or the leaper or something like that. Right? And you'll see this one guy named the Dunk Master, who is really big into these machines. You know, he started working with like the isokinetic machine in the 80s. But because it was never marketed very well, it never was able to sell enough items, and so the business went out. You know, that's just an example of how like interest will really dictate innovation. No interest, no innovation shows up. Now, somewhere along the lines, either through Dunkmaster or Powernetics, I'm not really sure, but Dunkmaster started using these machines called Supercats, like the Supercat Leaper, the Bear Squat, and they were built by a company named Powernetics. Now, I don't know if they built the first model of this or if this was a later iteration, because now there's like 3 or 4 companies that build things that look like Supercats, which is basically the exact same engineering. But for some reason, I guess they changed it up enough where they're not violating patents. You know, so you'll kind of come across these different variations of Supercats. Like those are just regular Supercats, I believe. Well, let me zoom in. Maybe
I
they're
think
bear squats.
this is the Cowboys training facility. Um,
Dallas
yeah, this is
Cowboys.
yeah Dallas Cowboys. They're bear. These are the bear ones.
Yeah, so the bear squats were made by Powernetics as well, and I think they're just a little thicker, a little heavier machine. Essentially it's a Supercat. It's not There's not much of a difference. They feel virtually identical. So the dunk master was really big into like getting vertical jumps. You know, he's the dunk master. You go to him to learn how to dunk, and he was a big. I think he was sponsored or he's an ambassador to Jump USA, which they sold like sole shoes. Do you remember those? Like back in the 2000s, there was like these shoes with like these platforms that you strap on to keep you on your toes. Like this one basketball player, I think it was Spud Webb or someone was a big advocate of them.
I honestly don't remember what were they called. I'll pull it up.
Jump soles. Yeah, if you put in jump sole NBA, you'll see this one basketball player, short guy. He's relatively short for the NBA, but he was like really good at dunking, and he was a huge
I do
advocate for these.
I do remember these. I just didn't
Yeah,
know
they're
what they're
like these
called.
big clunky like things you put on your feet to try to jump or try to help you jump higher, more calf loading.
I'm not seeing
And
the NBA guy, but I'll pull up the picture.
yeah, and so yeah, those things, yeah. So he was a big advocate into like the jump soles and using the isokinetic accelerator and using the Supercat. And I don't, man, Ram told me the story, but he told me a lot in one conversation. I don't fully remember, but somewhere along the lines that the Dunk Master started working with Mark Marinovich and introduced him to the Supercat machines. And that's what the Dunk Master told me several times. You know, the Dunk Master has left maybe 20 comments in my posts over the past year reminding me he's the one that introduced Mark Marinovich to the Supercat. I'm like, I believe you, buddy. It's like the 10th time you told me. I believe you. Like, don't sweat it. So he was like the one that introduced Marv, and then Marv started looking at it and realized how effective of a machine this is. And then also started looking at the isokinetic accelerator, and it's like, oh my God, like here's a way we can really take plyometrics to the next level. We can really take fan resistance, strength, neurological drive to the next level with these machines. And so Marv started using them, but then he started getting more creative with how he used them. You know, as you see, like here's an example where you can use it for like the lower body. Like you don't have to put it on your shoulders just to squat jump. You can actually invert yourself, right, and get lower impact, higher volume of stretch shortening cycle activation out of the athlete. You know, and this is a way where you can develop more plyometric strength, more plyometric stimulus into the body without having to worry about overloading or overworking like the joints, because it feels relatively light, but it's strong enough to get a stretch shortening activation. Like you can see when you look at the athlete's calves, you see how it kind of like expands and contracts like at the amateur shit. So what's the word, Jake?
Amortization.
Amortization phase. right? And it's relatively easy on the body, so you could really pump out a lot of stress onto the athlete without worrying about like jumper's knee or Achilles tendonitis or something like that. And so Marv really started adopting them and started getting really creative with these machines. And right around that time, he started working with Dr. Edith Hughes, and she expanded his program with the ball work and balance training methodology. So those two elements combined, it all kind of happened, I think, like within like a year, where Marv started working with the Supercat through the Dunk Master. He started understanding the ball work through Dr. Edith Hoyce, and he kind of smashed it all together to help master his training protocol. And that's how the machine got incorporated. And it's really unfortunate. I don't know what Powernetics was thinking. I hope they find a way to get their business going again, but I don't know what they were thinking. Because majority of people that get these machines use it for what Mark Marinovich modified it for. And they never marketed it for that. They would always just stick to jump squatting marketing. They never tried to look at what Marv was doing. And they acknowledge it. I think they left me a message at one time like, hey, man, we love what Marv does with the machine. It's really cool. It's really innovative. But they never took on that philosophy, right? And tried to, develop commercials, develop advertisements. Like, this machine can do so much more than what you're advertising it for. So at the end of the day, it's kind of their fault that they couldn't keep up the business after COVID, which is super unfortunate. Now, two other companies make a Supercat. They're pretty expensive. They average up to $3,400 per machine. I think Powernetics, they were only selling them for like $1,500 to $2,500, somewhere along there. They sold a lot of machines, but now your best chance is to just go on Facebook Market, and you got to hunt them down because they're floating around. I found one last night in Ohio for $1,000. I found another one in Michigan for $3,400. There's another one in Pennsylvania for $2,500. So they're out there. If you really want one and you're pretty persistent, you can find them.
Where does Sports Science Labs come in? Since I know they make a
All
lot of the
right.
machines now, and they kind of are a little more tied in with the Marinovich system. It seems like they've bought in. Correct me if I'm wrong, but don't they have a course on some of these Marinovich type movements on their website?
Maybe they do. I don't know. I haven't looked. Maybe they have a course explaining how to utilize the Supercat. But so how does Sports Science Lab tie into the Supercat and Mark Marinovich? Is that like the main
Yeah,
question?
yeah.
Oh man. So this is kind of like a controversial one. I'm trying to figure out how to say this because I don't want to speak for other people. But I also, at the same time, I want to be honest, and tell the truth about things. So I'm going to say this without naming names. And also because I don't want this to kind of like create some sort of like lawsuit or something like that, because this guy, let's just say when Gavin McMillan and Marv Marinovich started working together, Gavin was the main guy who was like really good at the business. He was also a really solid coach, but Marv was never great at developing a strong financial situation with his coaching business. And this is what I've heard from his best friends, from his closest instructors. I've heard that Todd Marinovich talked about this, so these are not rumors. This is just what I've learned over the years. And so Gavin kind of plugged in, and Gavin is actually really good at the business side of things, knowing how to pull in clients, generate leads, how to create sales. And so that's how they kind of work together. Now, these machines is the reason Gavin McMillan and Marv Marinovich stopped working with each other. It's because these machines, in particular the isokinetic accelerator, the fan-resistant Supercat-looking machine. Now, because of disputes on training methodology, on certain patents, yeah, that's a machine right there, on certain patents on how to get the machine to work properly, which direction to take the machine, the technology of this machine is the reason the Marinovich training system kind of fell apart. right? And there was a divide. You'll see Gavin McMillan working with Marv Marinovich during like the 2004 Troy Polamalu camp, and they got a small facility at this Christian high school in Capistrano, California. And they call it the sports lab. And you see Troy Polamalu and Marv Marinovich working together. They're working athletes. They're running the business. They're running their full-blown system: isokinetics, Supercat, ball work training, everything. It all blended together. And this is when they really started revolutionizing things, right around 2002 to 2004. Now, because of disputes and confrontations with the direction of the technology with this machine, there was a separation within the business and the partnership between Gavin and Marv. And I'm not going to go into details because I wasn't there, but let me just say it was not pretty. It was a bad falling out on a bunch of different levels. And so Marv Marinovich decided to have his brother Gary work with him to kind of help him with things, because Marv was he had a lot of trust issues from what it seems like. And he wanted someone to be there that was really close to him, like his brother. And so Gary and Marv separated away from Gavin, and they started their own thing called Marinovich Training Systems. And their first big break was working with BJ Penn, right? And that's where you see BJ Penn go into the nervous system training with Marv and Gary. And Gavin, he actually decided to go his own way, and he kept the name the Sports Lab, but he wanted to evolve it and create his own brand, so he labeled it Sports Science Lab. So they just differed from each other. And you can kind of piece this together. If you look in the books Probot X, when Marv was working with Dr. Edith Hoyce, developing like the ball work training methodology and trying to find a way to sell it, you'll see Gavin was a stand-in model, like stand-in athlete in a lot of the images. So so this is like there is a very complex relationship that they had, and it just didn't end well. And so so Gavin went his way, Marv went his way, and the rest is kind of history. Now I will say this, as far as the cause, like the mission, they both have done really good things, helping introduce this type of training to more people, helping more athletes. Like I wouldn't have been here without Sports Science Lab's influence or Marv's influence. So as far as the space, I would say what they've accomplished is really great. Even Gavin, you got to give Gavin credit where credit's due. He worked with a lot of high-level athletes, a lot of high-level boxers, and he delivered great results. It just is what it is, despite maybe people's personal feelings about him. But same with Marv. Marv has also done equally, if possibly better, results. So that's just where the divide sort of happened. And so now Sports Science Lab, they do have their own manufactured Supercat, but they got to build it for you. I had a client that ordered one from them because they said they're in stock, and he ordered it, paid the money, and weeks are going by, and he called him back, say, "Hey, what's going on? When are you guys delivering my machine?" It's like, "Oh, we got to build it." It's like, we actually have to build the machine, then send it out. It's going to take a couple months. So they kind of have them, but they kind of don't have them. You know what I mean? It's like a supply and demand sort of situation. But but really the reason you don't see these machines around why is because they're just the marketing needs to develop more. And I mean, as much as people love scientific studies, even though I think a lot of it's a huge waste of time, there's not enough actual published studies utilizing these machines to a great extent. And so now, like, there's not a lot of customer trust when it comes to using them, even though there's other scientific principles that are logically aligned with these same principles of this type of strength that do actually make sense to have been proven. But a lot of people don't really know how to think that way. They want to see a University of freaking Boston saying, yes, this machine works. Okay, now I can trust it.
There's also kind of like a cultural aspect where I would say we're coming to the end of a bodybuilding phase in our strength training culture. These are not the most efficient bodybuilding machines, but I think the culture is kind of shifting to a mindset that appreciates and utilizes this type of movement more.
Yeah, it's true. And there's a lot of trust, and there's a lot of familiarity with when it comes to the barbell culture, because the barbell culture is so vast and it's so easy to get indoctrinated into it. Like you got powerlifting, you have CrossFit, you have Olympic lifting, you have bodybuilding, you have sports performance. You have 5 industries that all utilize the same movements and the same barbells. And you have companies like Rogue Fitness, which makes millions and millions of dollars off these stupid ass things, just distributing barbells everywhere. So they're readily available. Anyone can get one. Everyone has an idea how to use it. There is a learning curve, but it's a familiar learning curve, and you see it a lot. You see it a lot in movies and sports documentaries. Everyone's using the barbell, so it's just familiar. It's like it's like anything. It's like the AK-47, old, reliable, gets the job done, doesn't really innovate.
Yeah, I remember when I started lifting in high school and stuff, I would just go to the gym and copy what I saw, and it was all
Yeah,
dumbbell, barbell stuff.
yeah, man. Yeah,
But
barbell's like barbell is literally like the AK-47 of like the training world.
yeah,
It can always work. It's not going to break. Not really. I've only seen one barbell snap ever. Uh, it's not the best gun, but it is a reliable gun. It'll get the job done. And it's familiar. So
yeah.
yeah,
It's also I think if you try this stuff, I've only tried it once really. I tried one isokinetic machine and one Supercat, but
where'd you try an
it looks
ISO at?
difficult.
Oh yeah, the
This
one guy's garage.
I tried the Supercat in the guy's garage. I tried the ISO at a jiu-jitsu gym in Baltimore. The guy just had one. He was shocked I knew what it was. Um,
Yeah,
it was like in a corner. I had to I got there 15 minutes before the class, and I was just getting a day pass. So I didn't train there consistently, but I was like, can I use that machine?
is he selling it?
I'll shoot him a message. It was Form Jiu Jitsu. Honestly, cool spot. I can't even remember the guy's name, but my buddy trains there, so I went there a couple times when I was in town.
Foreign
Um,
BJJ. I'll look for him if he's selling that bitch. Man, I'll freaking see if I can get it because Boston's not too far. It's only like 11 hours for me, 18 hours for me. You can make it happen.
yeah. Um, his name might have been Rick. That's
Okay.
what's coming to my mind. Um, what's Gavin's backstory? You've mentioned him. I know he's behind the sports science lab. Um, but how did he and Marv get connected, start working together? Was Marv creating the system and then Gavin came in, or did they kind of build the initial system together?
I don't know. I don't know. I think Ram would know the details of that more than me, or maybe Dr. Nail. Uh, I don't know how they started working together. I'm not sure. I know Gavin's background is that he's just been really big into like sports science for a really long time. He, I think like a part of like the Gavin McNeil lore is that he's 5'8" and he was able to dunk like in his 30s. Just like with his training methodology or with his understanding of training. That was like I don't know if it's true, but that's just a story that I hear. I don't know how they got connected. I just know somewhere in the early 2000s they started working together, and that's when Marv's system really like took on the main form. I want to say the final form, but almost its final form, what it is now. And that's as far as I know, as far as Gavin's background history. I think he's a hockey player, college hockey player. I don't know if he played pro. Uh, it's really about it. There's not a ton of information on Gavin.
Interesting. Um, that timing would have been right around when Marv was transitioning from the NFL to MMA.
But Marv wasn't just training NFL. Marv was training all athletes, and Marv had several different gyms. Like he had several
Okay.
spots. If you look in the Todd Marinovich documentary, the 30 for 30, the Marinovich Project, you can see all the different gyms Marv has been working in over the years. All the different spots, all the different like locations. So Marv, yeah, always worked with athletes. I think when he started working with Troy Polamalu on the main version of the nervous system training, that's when things like really took off for him. But yeah, I guess he just transitioned to MMA because he just needed a new venture to go into. Wanted like new challenge, and BJ Penn was really open to it. And of course, BJ Penn had like the resources to pay for Marv and to basically gatekeep him. Marv was just working with BJ for a period of time, So it just kind of came together. And actually, no, I think Ram is what hooked BJ and Marv Marinovich together. If you look at an old video, you can see Ram, BJ, and Marv at Ram's house. And they're doing like they're showing off some of the nervous system training stuff they're doing in Ram's garage. And that's because like Ram and Marv, they were like living in the same apartment complex. Like Ram was really helping Marv with like his living situation after like the divide between Gavin and Marv. And so, yeah, somewhere along those lines, they got connected with each other. I don't know the exact details though.
I've got this rough outline, and already just some of the people we're mentioning in this conversation aren't on here. But yeah, so this is some of the history. We've got Dr. Yesus, Edith Hughes. It seems like we would need to add Ram and Gavin to kind of this lineage for sure. But this is what I've got. Marv was the OG. Gary, Todd. Does Todd is he at all involved with the system?
A little bit. Todd's a little bit involved. Like Todd will work with like a couple clients. He'll work with a couple coaches, mostly quarterback stuff. Like showing them some ball work training, shoulder health, things like that. If you really want to start like from the beginning, it should start with like Bondarchuk from the Soviet Union, Vershansky from the Soviet Union, and Bernstein. Those three guys were like the main OGs of sports science. They were the godfathers of sports science. And they were before Marv Marinovich, they were before Louis Simmons, they were before all that shit, man. These guys basically wrote the scripture on sports science. They're the very, very, very first. And then Dr. Yesis was allowed to travel to Russia to correspond because it was deemed non-political during the Cold War. And Dr. Yesis knew Russian. He knew how to read and speak Russian, so he was able to translate manuals, go over to Russia, understand what they're doing. And Dr. Yesis, he was a sports science major. He was a sports science professor at UCLA. And so he'd go back and forth from Russia to California to learn sports science methodology from the Soviets. And but right around that time, Marv Marinovich was also getting hit to the Soviet Union training philosophy, because the Soviets were winning gold medals like all the time. Like they were dominating the Olympics. It was really like, they call it the Russian steamroller. And Marv was actually, I think he was just finishing his NFL career, and he became the strength and conditioning coach for the Raiders. And around that time, he would frequently go to UCLA to talk to the professors that knew how to speak and read Russian. And he somehow got a hold of these manuals. I don't know how he got a hold of some of the manuals, but he got a hold of some of them. And he would have the professors, like Ram told me, like he would be following these professors around UCLA, just translating these documents, trying to understand it, because you didn't have computers. You had to find someone and do everything on fucking pen and paper, or a typewriter, right? Like these were like, it was tough days to get information back then. And so Yesis and Marv simultaneously were learning the Soviet system, and they eventually started working together when it came to Todd Marinovich getting, I think, into the UCLA or to the NFL, one of those training camps. Marv Marinovich and Dr. Yesis started collaborating to help train Todd. Started using Soviet sports science techniques, and they were both hip to these ideas, and they were kind of counterintuitive to what the West was trying to come up with when it comes to their sports science. They were mostly focusing on what they can take from fitness and bodybuilding, trying to incorporate it into sports performance. But the Russians had a totally different approach. And because of the Cold War and because of natural biases, even biases that still exist today, a lot of the university professors, a lot of the sports coaches didn't want to hear it. They're like, we're not going to do no fucking Rusky training. It's like, what are you, a commie? What are you, a commie? You American. This is the American way. We're going to do it our way. Right? You had that cultural bias. It was the heat of the 80s. Like people were training themselves how to duck and cover from nuclear explosions at high schools. Like Right now we have like mass shooter protocols. They had nuclear explosion protocols. Like it was a real fear. And no internet. You had no fucking internet, right? You had like a phone, right? That you had to like, a rotary phone. You ever seen one of those, Jake, or what a rotary phone is?
Yeah, I used to use it at my grandparents' house.
Yeah, we got like fucking like like
Yeah.
manually switch the signal per number. Yeah, they had rotary phones. You had to memorize everyone's phone number. There are no computers. You had to do everything on a typewriter or a pen and paper. If you need to send information from one spot to another, you had to fucking mail it. Like you had to mail information. There's no internet yet. Or you had to call them and leave messages. I don't even think there was really fax machines in the 80s. Maybe it was just starting to show up if you had like a good service, but you also had like modem. Anyway, really hard to get information spread around back then. But they got it done. They started collaborating together to help Todd, and they filmed some of their training camp. I made a documentary about this where I found some footage of Mark Marinovich and Dr. Yessis working together. And Dr. Yessis would talk about Soviet training methodology and how much different it is, and how the West is like inappropriately training their athletes, and how the East is doing it so much more refined. And barely anyone would listen to him. Dr. Yessis went his whole career advocating on specific methodologies of sports science that the Soviets came up with. And he did it for like 30, 40 years. Dr. Yessis eventually passed away. And even still, people weren't really listening. Even still to this day, like people don't fully like understand Soviet training protocol, or they think plyometrics is an American invention, right? And they think sports science is an American creation. It's a Russian creation. We've been copying it like secondhand. And honestly, we only have about like 60% of their understanding really, really developed. And that's why you'll see like a random study on skater jumps improving hockey come out every once in a while, or like these, or how plyometrics actually benefits track and field. You'll see some of these studies pop up once in a while because these studies are so expensive and take forever to come out. Like the Russians were able to get all these studies done in the 60s and 70s, but because they're communists, and I will give the universities some credit, because they are communists, they generally tend to be dishonest because of propaganda. And if people want an idea of how bad the dishonesty is in a communist nation when it comes to distributed information or even telling the truth about certain things, watch the HBO miniseries Chernobyl. It is a freaking great. Have you ever seen that, Jake? You ever seen that show?
No, I was about to start a new show last night, and that one popped up on one of the top
Oh,
10.
dude,
I almost
it's
started it last night. That's kind of timely
so
you just
fucking
mentioned it.
good, dude. Just start that shit today. It's such a freaking good show, man. It's one of my favorite shows. But you will see how now, of course, it's dramatized, right? Because it has to be entertaining. But you will get an idea of how crazy this communist nation makes people's freaking brains. How everyone's afraid to tell the truth. Everyone, all they want to do is just blame each other. They bumble around certain things. They lie about everything, because they're so afraid of going to jail. Like I remember this one lady was arguing with me because she said, Soviet athletes didn't train out of fear; they trained out of pride. And I'm like, okay, so you're telling me that these figure skaters, every time they go to a hotel and there's Russian NKVD in uniforms that are literally standing, over their shoulder, monitoring every single word they say to everyone, you're not going to have any anxiety and fear, right? You're going to tell me that? You're going to say, that every time you have a conversation with someone at the Olympics, you have to get interviewed by the NKVD at the hotel and go over exactly what you said to them? You're not going to have any fear or paranoia? Like, get the fuck out of here. People have no idea how stressful a communist system is on people. It is insanely stressful. So, yeah, man. When you think about that, like the secrecy, the lying propaganda. So the point that I'm trying to make is that a lot of these university professors and a lot of these authority figures in the sports science industry would not trust what the Russians say at all. They would have too much bias. They would think, and steroids. There's the whole freaking, oh my God, like what a circle jerk this is. The whole thing where all the Soviets were on steroids. You got to discredit all of their sports performance training because they're all on steroids. And we clearly debunked the idea of an even playing field in sports on one of our episodes. Where we talked about like during like the 70s and 80s, the drug testing standards for United States athletes was fucking dog shit. Like it's dog water testing. Like they test them like a couple times before the game. So for like 3 to 4 years, no one's testing anything. No one has real good technology to test for drugs. You can only test for maybe 2 types, and there's like 6 different types of PEDs on the market. Like get the fuck out of here. American athletes were on juice just as much as the Russians. So that means that they're actually on a more even playing field. How about that? So in a world of juiced athletes, the Russians were still winning. So that goes to show how much more effective their training principles were. If you really think about it, if like all these athletes are taking shit, not all of them, but I promise you a lot of them, we got athletes today that are taking shit trying to get away with it, and the drug testing's really solid these days. Back in those days, man, you would do whatever you needed to do to win.
Yeah, it seems like there's always going to be like a new wave of performance enhancing. There was the EPO wave with TJ Dillashaw. That was kind of, he was 5-10 years ahead of the testing at the time, but it caught up to him.
Well, with TJ Dillashaw, so his thing, he only took EPO for a short period of time because he went too far down in weight classes. Like if you watch his training camp, I think he tried going to 125 or something like that, right? To fight not Triple G, Triple C, Henry Cejudo.
Cody Garbrandt.
No. Wait,
Okay.
maybe it was Cody Garbrandt. I can't remember, but TJ tried going down a weight class even further, and his body was just failing him. His nervous system was just falling apart. He had too little calories. He had no body fat. His hormonal system wasn't working. And so TJ was getting desperate. He was like, his weight wasn't coming off, his gas tank, like he was eating like fucking 1,000 calories a day. Like your bones will start breaking. If you're training MMA at that level on 1,000 calories trying to cut weight. And so TJ just started panicking, and he was like, fuck it, man, I'll just go to get on EPO. I don't even know what else to do. The fight's already scheduled, contract's already signed. And so that's what he did. He did it out of desperation. So I don't, and he didn't even get past the drug testing standards. They caught him his first cycle. So I don't think TJ was a chronic user of EPO. I think he did it out of desperation, and that's actually how most athletes start getting into shit. They start getting into steroids, is because their performances start failing them, and they can't figure out why. I believe a lot of it is these training protocols that kind of have like a bell curve effect, where as you're doing a training protocol, like the traditional way, you're going to start getting overall improvements on athleticism, right? Like you're building, you're getting stronger, you're getting a little bit faster, so you go heavier. What's the progressively overloading, right? Everyone loves that term. You're progressively overloading your training, right? Oh, I got to go heavier. I'm getting stronger. This training camp, let's see if we can put on more strength. Another 45-pound, bro. Like another 45-pound plate. I got this. Like, and it goes up and up and up. But then you start hitting the point in diminishing returns, where now the training is reducing your soft qualities. Your hard qualities is outweighing your soft qualities. And that's when you start becoming rigid. You start becoming stiff. You're off by a half second. You're starting to feel tighter. Your shoulders are starting to bother you because of like the squatting, because of the weight training. And now your cardio is starting to fade because your muscle tissue is too thick. You can't keep it energized properly, or maybe you're not using proper heart rate monitors. It's not getting periodized out. And so then performance starts to slowly decline, right? I think this is exactly what happened to Israel Adesanya. This is exactly what happened to him. Because I was watching his training camps over the years, and he was like just doing basically like CrossFit, functional fitness type shit, like your standard stuff. And he'd been doing it, sprinting up sand dunes, thinking he's getting faster, but he's really getting slower. So you keep compounding that, over and over and over and over again, right? Until eventually until eventually, like, the compound effect is too great, and now you're slower by a half second. But it took maybe 18 months to get there. But now a half second, that's a big fucking deal. Like in a fight, a half second, like that's the difference between landing the punch and the punch landing on you first. And so then you get this performance decline where now you're feeling slower, you're feeling tighter. The muscular equilibrium is falling apart. Your quads are becoming stronger than your hamstrings. Your calves are becoming overcompensated compared to your feet. And it starts breaking down. Injuries start to occur. And so then performance starts to decline, and people just say, "Oh, I'm just getting older," or I'm losing my edge. We got to hire David Goggins. I gotta freaking I got to get myself fired up mentally, but it's not mental, it's physical. And it just keeps getting lower and lower and lower and lower. And then what they do is they panic because they're not getting the results they need out of their training. So they're like, fuck it, man. I got this one fight. I'm only going to do maybe 2 or 3 more fights. I guess this is over. He's taking shit, so I'm going to take shit. They start justifying it in their minds. And so they get on some sort of performance enhancing drug. And then all of a sudden they feel the increases again because now they're chemically enhanced and they're getting these small increases, but it's never enough. If you have bad training with high drugs, it's never enough to really get you to the level you need to be. You'll get some increases initially. Strength will increase, recovery will increase, your mood will increase because of the hormones. So it's artificially stimulating you. You artificially feel like you're becoming stronger and faster, but you're just getting marginal increases, And then all of a sudden, when it comes to fight night, they really don't pull it off. Not that well. I've never seen someone take steroids that became like phenomenally great. Like even look at someone like John Jones. Like when he started taking PEDs, it's not like his performance like drastically improved. I think it helps them like psychologically where they feel stronger, they feel younger, they feel more energized. But if you look at the tapes, right? If you look at the tape, not a huge difference. Not like what I've seen with like RDA. Not like with what I've seen with like BJ, or Troy Polamalu. I'm not seeing those kind of increases from steroids. So you need good training. You need good training methodology. Steroids alone, if you take steroids with shitty training, you're just going to get marginally better, but you're going to feel unstoppable, right? But in reality, your performance is not going to be that drastically different. Does that make sense?
Yeah, we saw like when I was growing up in the MLB, steroids made a big difference, and I think that isn't at least in part due to everything is set. Like you can kind of
Well, that's
load
a
up in advance.
that's a
It's
different
it's
execution.
less fluid. It's less fluid. It's more just about the power, which
Right.
steroids will increase, but you get a little more stiff too, like with those big guys. So
Yeah, and
that's probably why it doesn't translate as well to MMA.
that's an interesting argument because if you look at the MLB with their steroid epidemic and the increase in home runs, because if you're doing the old traditional system, which is hard quality based, and you're taking steroids, right? So if you need to execute just one power movement, steroids and hard quality training will help. But Mark McGwire is never known as like a great base runner. He never like played outfield, right? And got like a lot of shit done. Like what was he? Let me guess. I'm just guessing first or third baseman.
Yeah, he's a first baseman.
Yeah, fucking the most the fattest guys are always first or third. Like, come on, like
Yeah.
the most unathletic position. They just got to stand there and just wait for the ball. So like, yeah. So if you look at that, like if you were to do that kind of training for like your outfielders are going to start getting hurt. They're going to start getting slower and feeling more stiff. Those outfielders are the ones they need more soft quality. First baseman, and you're just a hitter. You can just be good with steroids and hard quality development. You'll do fine. But in like MMA, where it's basically all soft quality, like very rarely you're going to see a hard quality expression in MMA. Like every once in a while you'll see someone like Conor McGregor knock people out with one punch, but it's so rare, right? That's why Conor McGregor was so special. People grab because he was doing like the impossible. But like 99% of combat sports, it's volume, force generation, volume, and soft quality. That's like 99% of the game. And then maybe some hard quality will kick in there.
the power doesn't last. I always thought it was interesting in baseball too that like the hitters their averages didn't drop. Like their bases might they get a little slower, but they still have the same plate coverage. Typically, if a guy's home runs go up, his batting average often goes down. He's focusing more on power at the cost of contact. But
Really?
at least in that steroid era, it was just numbers up across the board, just uh, exit velocity up across the board, higher percentage of base hits. Kind of interesting.
Yeah. But well, now you got like these pitchers where now it's like the era of pitching, right? In baseball, everything's about gas fastballs, and we're just losing elbows like freaking crazy right now. Like the amount of freaking pitchers' arms getting blown out or their pitching cycle. What you told me with the Dodgers was insane. Like their budget on pitching, their lineup on pitching, like it's like another like they have like three. How many pitchers are like consecutive? Like they're like season after season, they're staying on the team for the Dodgers. Do you know?
So the on the active roster, there's 13 pitchers at any time. There's five starting pitchers in the rotation, and then the rest are relievers. Um, but with the Dodgers, like they're probably paying for 8 or 10 high quality starters, and they're just banking on having five healthy at any given time. Most teams will have five good starters, and then three of them are healthy. They try to get everyone healthy for the playoffs, kind of thing. But yeah, the Dodgers are just surplus of across the board.
Yeah, it
It's pretty
reminds me of
nuts.
like
And
the
they're
video
setting a
game
record.
industry. It's like the video game or movie industry. Like if you can't write a good story, like just throw as much money at the CGI as possible. Hopefully that'll be enough to get us through. They just throw money at the problem.
Yeah, I mean, they won last year. It's kind of working.
Yeah, so I would say this for the Dodgers for right now, it's working, but it'll a strategy like that will only work for so long. Like you can only throw money at a problem for for so long until eventually, because what's going to happen? These other teams that don't have that kind of budget, they're going to find a way to innovate, and they're going to find a way to keep their pitchers lasting and keep them healthy, and they're eventually going to outperform them. Eventually it's going to take some time, but money at the problem is never good for longevity. It never truly works. Speaking of which, Jake, actually something kind of popped
Yeah,
up again.
people talk a lot about the or,
I think we're on a little bit of a delay. What were you going to say?
yeah. Yeah, last thing I'll say about the pitching is yeah, like the parity in the MLB is a lot higher than the parity in the salary cap of the MLB, like the parity in the results at the end of the year. There's a lot of the bottom of this league in salary cap end up near the top of the league in the playoffs, which is interesting. And it has to do with what you're saying, the innovation. Like the Tampa Bay Rays, for instance, their player development is the top. It's the best. Everyone knows it. They're always competitive, even though they always have one of the smallest budgets. And they just trade their players to the Dodgers for prospects when the players get good and then develop those prospects. And that's how they operate.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I would. What I was going to ask Jake is if we can quickly switch gears. Now that we're kind of talking about PEDs again, what have you heard when it comes to LeBron and his like PED rumors? I've been seeing this pop up more and more on like Facebooks and on news articles, like in the comments. Is your finger on the pulse with this at all?
I haven't seen anything about that recently. I saw more stuff about that like maybe 5 or 10 years ago. Yeah, it's all I see about LeBron is that he has like a $1.2 million budget a year or whatever for his training and recovery.
Hmm. Okay. All right. Interesting. Because yeah, it's a lot of people have been saying that he's been taking performance enhancers, which is the reason why he's been in the league for so long, like at his age. And I haven't looked into it too much, so I was just wondering if Skip is like running his mouth on ESPN that you can fill me in on or something like that.
Yeah, I haven't seen anything from the big names, but I wouldn't. I mean, the only person who had similar longevity was Tom Brady, I'd say, and Tom Brady was playing a much less physically demanding position. You could get hit as a quarterback, but you don't have to jump, land, cut the same way LeBron does. So it's it's pretty anomalous what he's doing. Like you got to go back to like Shoeless Joe Jackson and some of those old players before they had you know uh, volume restrictions in their playing.
Shoeless Joe Jackson. Nice. All right. Well, what else? What else do we got? Was that all the questions?
Yeah, we covered most of them.
My pelvis is cramping.
They were asking if going back to Marinovich real quick, did they use the isometrics? Or I guess what parts of your system are directly from the Marinoviches? What parts are added on either from you or I know there's Nick Carson was in between you and the Marinoviches and kind of the lineage.
So my program, my version of the program, I would say is like 90% like Marinovich training methodology and principle, but I've kind of expanded my own sort of like ideas. Trying, especially because majority of my clients are older guys. So I developed this series of modalities in my training program called reactive strength training. And I remember like I was kind of trying to figure out like why like old man strength is a thing. Like I was kind of sitting with my ChatGPT like late one night, and I'm just trying to like make discoveries, like what's going on with this old man strength. What like actually I was trying to figure out mobility. I was trying to figure out like what's going on with mobility, with stretching, what type of stretching do you need to do, static. I was trying to understand the differences and understand why my mobility increased by doing ball work and not classic mobility training. And so then it kind of started diving into like fascial dehydration, tissue dehydration, how certain muscle groups, because of like just doing hard quality like weightlifting, ruins the elasticity and neurological signal into the muscle when it comes to creating velocity. Like and the tissue becomes very compressed and very rigid on top of getting older, which naturally dehydrates your body. So what your nervous system does is it starts bracing and becoming like a rigid block, and so that's what old man strength is. And that's why you'll feel guys who are older, like they'll be like really strong as hell, but when they try to sprint, they'll like blow their hamstrings out, right? Or they'll blow their knees out. So it's because the elasticity has fallen apart. The elastic composition in their tissue is not really there anymore. And so I was trying to think like, okay, like can ball work alone like fix this? And the AI was telling me like, yes, like it can help, but it's not going to address like as many strength imbalances. And I was like, well, what can we do? Like we need some sort of way to develop strength, but also maintain elasticity into the tissue. And so then it started referencing different studies on how elastic development or reactivity developments into the tissue, because elastic tissue is just reactive tissue. It means that the tissue can contract, but it could also shift and recontract and restabilize in real time, right? And that's what you're kind of experiencing with proprioception, with balance training, right? Your tissue is becoming stiff and reactive at the same time. That promotes better elasticity instead of it just like being hard and compressed and braced. And so I'm thinking like, okay, so stability exercises help create more reactivity. Reactivity promotes elasticity. So I'm like, okay, well, let's think about this. We have like the isometric hold principle that Marv was subscribing to, where you do 3 different joint angles, like a leg squat. You have like quarter flexion, quarter flexion, half flexion, full flexion. Each point of flexion, you withstand a load for 10 seconds. So it creates 30 seconds of time under tension, right? That principle has been proven to really improve velocity, neuromuscular efficiency, motor unit recruitment, and because you're hitting these different joint angles, you're teaching the body to hold strength at different parts of triple extension or triple flexion, right? And so I'm like, okay, that's a good principle. So let's take that principle and let's start combining it with this other principle on stability training. I was like, okay, so we need a stability elements, correct? Yes, so you need a stability element. So that means all the points of leverage have to be proprioceptive. So if I'm doing, let's say, a push-up hold, right? I need all my leveraging points to be proprioceptive to make it stabilize, to make it stability, because stability creates reactivity, reactivity creates elasticity. And so I'm like, okay, I get the medicine balls. I'm like, okay, so I have two hands on a medicine ball. Okay, that's proprioceptive. And I put both my feet on a stability ball. Okay, now I have 3 points of proprioception on my leveraging angles. And so now I'm going to take this principle and this other principle, I'm going to smash it together. That's how you create new things. And so I'm like, okay, so let me do these 3 different positions. So I have both hands on a medicine ball, or both hands each on a medicine ball, my feet on a stability ball. I'm just doing 3 different positions of holding here 10 seconds, 10 seconds, then all the way down 10 seconds. So now I'm training an isometric principle to promote velocity, and I'm training a stability reactive principle to make sure that the tissue stays elastic, so it doesn't get overly compressed, and that's what creates like that tight feeling. And so I combined those 2 things together, and I created what I call reactive strength training, where you do 3 different positions at different joint angles, and they're all leveraged against a proprioceptive element. And so that's like my new sort of creation that I added to the program. And I originally made it to help with this old man stiffness that a lot of my clients are feeling. Because even the ball work wasn't quite giving them enough strength. It wasn't quite giving enough elasticity. When I started implementing this, it really improved the strength quality of my clients. Strength quality really started to improve. We started finding more imbalances, more areas where they're leaking force, and we're able to maintain the elasticity at the same time. So yeah, that's sort of kind of like my contribution to like this nervous system training methodology. So the main question was like, how much of my program is based on like Marv Marinovich, and how much is it like differentiate? And I would say almost like all of it is from the original system that Marv sort of developed. I have created my own additions, trying to create some like innovation and experimentation, especially with my main clientele, which is older guys. And I was working on this. This new form of strength training I call reactive strength training, which is basically just like stability training. But I'm combining it with some of the isometric principles that Marv Marinovich developed, where he'll do like 3 different joint angles with 10 seconds of pressure at each joint angle, right, to help with tissue rigidity, motor unit recruitment, and it creates a better biomechanical movement once they start getting into plyometrics. The movement becomes a lot smoother. And so that principle I've been using forever. And I was trying to figure out how to improve mobility and tissue elasticity without having to do so much ball work training. Because I also wanted more strength quality, because some of these older guys, they need more strength and they don't have Supercat. So I'm trying to find a way to create like a middle ground for them. So I took 2 scientific principles that work, that are proven, the 3 position isometrics and stability exercises. Now it's been proven that stability exercises helps create more reactivity into the tissue. More reactive tissue becomes more elastic. It's more responsive. Stretch shortening cycle happens a lot easier through it because it's less compressed. Right? So I'm like, okay, let's take these 2 ideas and let's blend them together. And that's where I created reactive strength training, where you need all your points of leverage need to be proprioceptive. So say, for example, you do like the reactive push-up hold, as I call it, where both your hands are on 2 medicine balls, right? So you have a medicine ball in one hand, medicine ball in the other hand. So you have to like stabilize yourself. And your feet are on an inflatable stability ball. So all my leverage points have a proprioceptive element to them. And then I just do 3 position hold in that. 10 seconds, 10 seconds, 10 seconds. So now I'm developing isometric strength, motor unit recruitment, and I'm also getting more reactivity out of the muscle. And it also helps stimulate more neurological feedback and neurological understanding, especially when it comes to some of these other parts of like the joints, like the tendons and ligaments that run deep into the joints, like the ACL and PCL. It hits all these different layers, and so you can literally create like new shit whenever you want to. Like I created like a whole new form of doing strength training just by taking 2 principles and blending them together. And that was a good way for me to help these older guys get more strength quality into their body while maintaining the elasticity to reduce the old man stiffness that sets in through fascial and tissue dehydration, and too much muscle bracing through heavy concentric weightlifting. So that's like my own contribution to, like, I guess, like the system. Now, has it been scientifically proven? No, it hasn't. But the principles are both scientifically proven. So logically, what do you think is going to happen? Shit's probably going to work. Like, I don't see a reason why it wouldn't work. And my clients had like huge responses from it. Finding weak areas, hamstring muscles that aren't working properly, internal external rotations not working properly, maintaining a good neuromuscular efficiency, for injury resistance. So yeah, that's kind of like been my thing with the nervous system training. That's like probably the main part that's not a part of the original system, but it is in nature, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I honestly didn't know you added that. For what it's worth, that's probably my favorite section, the reactive strength, especially the single leg bridge on it. Um,
Oh, it's brutal.
it, yeah, and just that little detail of like trying to elevate the heel, which you kind of can do in the short range. I barely can, or pretty much can't in the middle range, and then definitely can't in the far range. But that exercise alone has helped my hamstrings more than anything else I've done, really.
Yeah. So yeah, and that's how easy it is. That's how easy it is to invent shit. Just take two things that already exist. Like, that's how music genres are made. Like, rap music is just disco and funk, and you push it together and it created rap.
Yeah,
Like, rock and roll is just orchestral music. Like, for movie soundtracks and stuff, you just take orchestral musics, and you take what's it that you take, like these I forgot what they're called. There was like it was like a weird, like, mid Victorian era type of performance. Where, have you ever seen Mary Poppins, where like they have like a bunch of instruments on them, where they got like a cymbal on their head and they got a drum and horns on their feet and shit like that. It's like an
I've
old.
seen that.
But yeah, you take two elements, you take two existing elements, and you push them together. That's how you make a new thing, right? That's how you make new genres. That's how you make new video games. That's how you make new everything. And I just did that with this with sports training. So other you sports performance coaches that are out there that want to be more scientific, that want to be more innovative, just think of two training principles and see if you can blend them together to create something new. Because that's what we need. We need more innovation. We need more experimentation. That's why, like, I always look at other people's training systems, and I'm trying to think, okay, like, he's adding this, he's adding that. There's no scientific evidence. Like, there's no study that said, like, this movement helps with X, right? But you don't need to. Just follow the scientific logic, and
Hmm.
yeah, man, you got innovation.
Yeah. Shout out whoever was the first person to think of combining peanut butter and jelly. But
Yeah, yeah. There you go, man. Yeah, look at the sandwich.
it's all about.
Bread, and whatever the hell you can stuff into the middle. Just smash it together. You got something new.
Yeah. Every once in a while, you end up with the golden combination.
Yeah.
All right, Quentin. Well, we're about at time for today, but
Okay.
everyone who's been following along, like, comment, subscribe. We appreciate it. We'll keep coming out with new content. Send us your questions, comments, videos, and we will add them to our queue. Thank you all.
Thank you.